On a spring day in 2024, the Robeson County Police in North Carolina received a strange call from a woman. In a slow and weak voice, she asked the police if they could locate her phone. She also stated that she was about to be murdered and hoped the police would find her body as soon as possible. However, before the dispatcher could respond, the call was abruptly disconnected. So, who was this woman? Was this a sign of psychological distress, or was it a coerced call meant to legitimize a murder? Join us at Crime Documentary Files as we uncover the truth. On April 27, 2024, at Lumber River State Park in Robeson County, North Carolina, the body of a 30-year-old woman named Mica Miller was discovered. The cause of death was determined to be a gunshot wound. Initially, the police quickly concluded that Mica Miller had taken her own life. However, Mica's family and the public were not convinced. Mica's sister mentioned that Mica had often confided in her, saying that if she ever died from a gunshot, the person responsible would undoubtedly be John Paul Miller, Mica's husband. The victim's family suspects that the 911 call was part of an elaborate ruse orchestrated by the person who killed Mica, possibly using voice-altering technology to deceive the police. They also pointed out that Mica did not typically speak in such a slow manner. Moreover, immediately after Mica's death, John hurriedly arranged for her cremation without any intention of having an autopsy performed on her body. This action further fueled the family's suspicions that John was the killer and that he was trying to cover up his crime. Additionally, the relationship between Mica and John had already deteriorated. She had previously called the police, suspecting that John had installed a tracking device on her car and slashed her tires. Just days before the murder, she had filed for divorce and sought a restraining order against John. However, at the time of the incident, John was confirmed to be in Charleston, South Carolina, with a clear alibi. So, is John really the perpetrator? According to the Daily Mail, John has a lengthy criminal record, including charges of assault, battery, and traffic violations. In 1995, at just 17 years old, John caused a car accident. But because his family was very wealthy, his parents immediately paid $6,200 to help him avoid charges. Instead of showing remorse, John continued his reckless behavior. 3 years later, he was convicted again for reckless driving, but it didn't stop there. Just a year later, on a stormy day, John deliberately drove his car toward a woman who was shoveling sand in front of her house. He even ran over the woman, then got out of the car and brutally attacked her. This violent act only resulted in a 4-year prison sentence, which was later suspended. In 2000, John was accused of assault again. Then, in 2004, he was involved in yet another violent incident. However, with his family's influence, these incidents repeatedly faded into silence. At this point, it's impossible not to mention John's powerful father. Mr. Miller was a senior pastor at a Baptist church, the principal of a Bible school, and also the president of a university. Yet, he was a deceitful and corrupt man. Not long after John was born, Miller was accused of inappropriate conduct with female students. In 1993, he moved to Myrtle Beach, transforming an abandoned military base into a Bible school. He also built a Baptist church right next to the school. However, his nature remained unchanged. In 2014, he was arrested on multiple charges, including visa fraud, hiring illegal workers, and labor violations. According to the New York Daily News, Miller turned his Bible school into a forced labor camp targeting foreign students. The focus of the school shifted away from education, with its primary goal being to turn students into full-time workers for his family. Students were forced to work long hours for low pay, and they were even given expired food to eat. In 2000, John married his first wife, Allison, and they had 4 children together. However, during his marriage to Allison, John met Mica, who later became his second wife. Mica was born on March 7, 1994. At the age of 15, she moved to Myrtle Beach with her family and joined the church where John served as a pastor. A 15-year-old girl and a 29-year-old man are unlikely to become friends in any typical sense, especially considering the nature of their relationship as teacher and student or pastor and congregant. a relationship that inherently involves a significant power imbalance. Nevertheless, John and Mica quickly became friends. In 2010, when Mica was 16, she began working part-time at the church and occasionally babysat John's 4 children at his home. 2 years later, under John's matchmaking, Mica, who had just turned 18, married another man who also worked at the church, and he happened to be John's close friend. John officiated their wedding. According to John, the moment he saw Mica walk into the church in her pristine white wedding dress, he was captivated. He realized he had fallen in love with Mica and felt envious of the man standing next to her. Not long after Mica's wedding, John began to express his feelings. He exploited his position as a pastor to send Mica's husband on a missionary trip to a distant location, thereby making it easier for him to be close to Mica. John's repeated escapes from legal consequences had led him to develop delusions of power. He believed he could do anything in this world without facing any punishment. This blind confidence caused him to completely lose his conscience, or perhaps he was aware but simply didn't see it as a problem. John always considered himself as someone chosen by God, and even when he was hurting others, he justified his actions by convincing himself that he was helping them. By 2015, both John and Mica admitted that they were having an affair. 2 years later, they divorced their respective spouses and married each other. Ironically, John told reporters that not long after their wedding, Mica was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and dependent personality disorder. She had to take medication to manage her conditions. However, Mica claimed that John forced her to take the medication, which she considered an illegal act. From the moment his first marriage fell apart, John's ex-wife Allison wrote in her divorce papers that John had admitted not only to drug addiction, but also to having relationships with young girls in the church. In her child support request, Allison noted that when she discovered John's infidelity, he confessed to her and the congregants that he was a sex addict and had an attraction to girls under 16. Several girls in the church corroborated this. Despite this, people still regarded him as a respected pastor. The church leaders didn't even consider removing John from his position. They merely recommended that he seek treatment and take some time off to recover. John ignored all of this. As a result, many congregants left the church out of disappointment. However, John continued his destructive behavior, and his addiction only worsened. In a video recorded by his friends, John was seen writhing on the floor, repeatedly saying, "It feels like thousands of ants are crawling on my skin." By 2023, Mica could no longer endure the situation and filed for divorce, citing John's years of infidelity. Not only that, but he often made her the subject of jokes during his sermons. According to Mica, on February 8, 2024, John forced her into a psychiatric hospital under the pretext of her being mentally unstable. During Mica's hospitalization, John took the opportunity to access all her personal electronic devices and delete some information. Mica also accused John of stealing her car while she was in the hospital. John, on the other hand, argued that it wasn't theft because they were married, so any property was communal. He explained that he had hidden the car only to prevent Mica from selling it. On March 10, 2024, in front of the congregation, John expressed outrage when he discovered that as many as 18 people had messaged Mica saying, "If you want to know the truth about your husband, come to me. I'll keep it confidential." John condemned this by saying, "I'm truly disgusted by those who badmouth their spouse behind their back." But isn't it true that John had repeatedly attacked and insulted Mica right in front of the congregation during his sermons? Regardless, it was clear that Mica and John's marriage had seriously deteriorated. That's why so many people reached out to Mica. Unfortunately, John either didn't realize this, or he did but chose to handle it in a controlling and selfish manner. He took Mica's phone, forced her into a psychiatric hospital, and told her that the people trying to help her were demons, isolating her from the outside world. In a subsequent sermon, John continued to bring up Mica. He claimed that Mica had left him after being discharged from the hospital, taking all the money with her, and continued to speak ill of him to others. He declared that he didn't care because he was busy building schools in Africa and helping impoverished children. He also mentioned that he would find a new wife who was beautiful, wealthy, strong, healthy, and loved God. But in reality, the situation was quite the opposite. While John outwardly acted indifferent, he was secretly trying to sabotage Mica's life. Just a few days later, Mica had to report to the police that someone had slashed her car tires. During this time, police also discovered that 4 GPS tracking devices had been installed on the car Mica frequently used, and the prime suspect was none other than John. However, he claimed that his reason for monitoring Mica was out of concern that she might buy a gun and do something harmful. Just a few weeks before Mica's death, she filed a complaint in court stating that she had seen sensitive photos of herself being circulated online. Mica suspected that John was behind it, and she was right. John didn't even try to hide his despicable actions. In an email to Mica, he shamelessly admitted, "Yes, I did that to you. I wanted to make you suffer." The question is, why would John want to torment Mica like this? The answer isn't hard to see. His vile behavior stemmed from selfishness and hatred. John wanted to control, punish, and humiliate Mica as retribution for her daring to stand up against him and seek a divorce. 9 days before Mica's death, she wrote in a note to her lawyer, "Since the day I married John, I've been oppressed in every way you can imagine. He abused me both physically and mentally. John spared no effort in manipulating me. He insulted and humiliated me, controlled my finances, and kept me captive. John monitored me constantly through letters, phone calls, emails, and messages. He hacked my email and social media accounts, stole my phone, and impersonated me to send messages to congregants, friends, and family, fabricating stories about me having affairs with young men in the church. He even planted tracking devices on my car. Every day I live in pain, fear, and despair." Yet, in front of others, John portrayed himself as a good husband who was deeply concerned for his wife. He spread the narrative that Mica was mentally unstable, suffering from bipolar disorder, and would self-destruct without him by her side. John excused her negative comments about him by claiming that her severe illness was to blame, and he was willing to sacrifice his own reputation for her sake. Around 12:12 p.m. on April 27, 2024, surveillance cameras captured footage of Mica purchasing a gun at a store. By 2:54 p.m. that same day, she had called the police. 2 hours later, her body was discovered in the river. Additionally, the police found the gun purchase receipt in Mica's car. In a sermon after his wife's death, John revealed this information with an unusual demeanor. He appeared indifferent, even making light of Mica's mental health history. John insisted that Mica, worn down by her illness, had taken her own life. It's worth noting that at this time, the police had not yet released any official statement regarding the cause of Mica's death, yet John was quick to conclude and blame her for the troubles in their marriage. At Mica's funeral, John once again put on a display of grief. He cried and spoke emotionally about his late wife. In front of friends and family, he recounted how he had visited the morgue 4 times to see her, even holding her hand and trying to bring her back to life. John also made a point to highlight Mica's beauty, boasting that she was a former beauty queen and a star on the soccer field. He mentioned that she was a wonderful wife who always praised him as the greatest preacher in the world. However, John's remarks focused solely on Mica's outward appearance, her social status, achievements, and how she supported him. He made no mention of her soul or character, perhaps because John never truly cared about those aspects. To him, Mica was not a cherished life partner, but merely a trophy to show off to others. So when Mica tried to break free and take control of her life, John was furious. Her departure was like stripping away the accomplishment he believed he owned. This raises the question, could John also have had psychological issues? He projected all his insecurities, fears, and shortcomings onto his wife by claiming Mica was sick, using it as a justification for his surveillance and control over her. He constantly blamed Mica to avoid taking responsibility for his own actions. It's possible that John craved status and power, viewing his wife as a possession to satisfy his selfish desires. This approach may have worked initially, allowing John to keep Mica under his control, but eventually, things spiraled out of control, causing Mica immense suffering while John's hatred grew stronger. Although John had an alibi, many still believed that he was behind Mica's death. He might not have been directly involved, but it's hard to consider him innocent. All evidence points to John using domestic violence to gradually manipulate and indirectly push Mica to her breaking point. One Sunday morning, a large crowd gathered outside the church, holding signs and wearing t-shirts that read, "Justice for Mica." They demanded that authorities investigate and bring John to justice. On April 28, 2024, Mica's family also posted on social media, asking the public to stop spreading false information about her death. Mica's father revealed that her hands and arms had numerous defensive wounds, which seemed odd if she truly intended to end her life. Additionally, several shell casings were found at the scene, but no bullets were recovered. It appears that the police overlooked these suspicious details. They hastily concluded that Mica acted alone, based solely on a blood alcohol test, without conducting a toxicology screening. What's particularly strange is that if John had done nothing wrong, why was he in such a rush to have his wife's body cremated? Mica's father also mentioned that given John's series of threatening actions, Mica's decision to buy a gun was entirely understandable, as she needed to protect herself. He believes it's possible that Mica was coerced into making the call to the police, or that the call itself was faked by the killer. According to Mica's father, the autopsy revealed bruises on Mica's arms, suggesting she tried to fend off her attacker. It's possible that during the struggle, the perpetrator accidentally fired several shots that missed Mica, which would explain the multiple shell casings found at the scene. After the attack, the killer likely threw Mica into the river to dispose of her body. Unfortunately, there is no evidence to support Mica's father's claims. On May 5, 2024, John appeared on television for an interview, once again stating that Mica was a wonderful wife, but unfortunately suffered from mental illness. John claimed that he had pleaded with family and friends for help, but no one believed him. As a result, he said he had to find ways to help Mica on his own, never imagining it would end in such tragedy. While John continued to feign grief, the media uncovered photos of him cozying up with another woman named Susie Skinner. It turns out they had been secretly involved for years, even while Susie was still married. In September 2021, Susie's husband was found dead in a swimming pool. What's noteworthy is that the pool was located very close to the church where John worked. Although the police concluded that Susie's husband drowned, many people didn't believe that explanation. Friends revealed that Susie's husband was an excellent swimmer before a car accident at age 20 left him paralyzed. Despite his paralysis, he was still very comfortable in the water and often surfed at the beach without assistance. Therefore, his drowning in a swimming pool seemed highly unusual, raising significant questions about the circumstances behind this tragic accident. On May 9, 2024, amid growing public outcry, John's defense attorney spoke out, asserting that his client had nothing to do with Mica's death. The attorney claimed that it was Mica's mental illness that took her life, not John, and urged people to stop blaming him. Currently, the FBI is investigating John and the organization he owns under suspicion of embezzlement. At the same time, the state prosecutor's office announced that they would be cooperating with the FBI to thoroughly investigate the mysterious circumstances surrounding Mica's death. So, what do you think? Is John the real culprit behind Mica's death? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on other intriguing cases. See you in the next video.